Our last speaker for the session is Lucia Schoombee of Elsevier. The presentation is about safeguarding against predators in the publishing industry. Over to you, Lucia.
Thank you, Vivian. So, some of you are going to say yay, because finally maybe we're going to hear something back from Elsevier to say, to respond, and some of you are going to say yay, now we're almost at that, at those cocktails. So all I can say is, it's going to be yay, we're almost at those cocktails. So thank you very much for this opportunity to talk to you. I want to talk to you about that big elephant. So we're going to talk about the predatory journals, and specifically about what SCOPUS is doing to combat that. What are the safeguard measures that we are putting in place? And SCOPUS has had to implement these measures to ensure that predatory journals are not indexed and that they do not infiltrate sites. So this is very important for us. So first to have a look at what is the scope of the problem, and I'm referring to two researchers that did research in Finland, and that they found a spectacular increase, as you can see here on the red line, which is the general increase. So there's a spectacular increase, and they call it that they spewed out about 420,000 articles into the market in 2014. This is up from 53,000 in 2010. And in reaction to this, Jeffrey Beale said that the increase is significant and shows that predatory journals are saturating scholarly communication. He added that research published in predatory journals is polluting the entire scholarly publication ecosystem. The graph also shows that the predatory publication by size of the publishers. So you can see the sizes. I can't read it actually myself now, but it is in groups of how many journals each of those publishers publish. And you can see from these lines that it is the smaller publications that publish between or less than 100 journals that are more prone to putting the predatory journals out there. So, as I mentioned, SCOPUS 2 we have felt that effect. In fact, I think all of the indexes will acknowledge that they are not immune. We are not immune to this phenomenon, because it can happen that a journal that is covered becomes predatory when it's selected. It becomes predatory after it has been selected. And this is, as I mentioned, also the case for the other indexes. For example, this slide shows, it was some time ago, it shows 10 predatory journals that were covered by SCOPUS. All 10 of those have been since re-evaluated. They have been removed from SCOPUS. 8 out of 10, and then 2 of them were deemed meeting the SCOPUS content selection criteria, and they have been continued in SCOPUS. This issue is pertinent because it is not a measure. The issue is not whether there are predatory journals in SCOPUS, but what are we doing about it? That is what I want to talk about this afternoon. So my slide, right. So first, let's have a look. Just step back, because I don't think that everybody is familiar with SCOPUS. So I just want to give a very, very brief introduction. So SCOPUS is a multidisciplinary abstract and citation database covering more than 22,000 peer-reviewed journals, 96,000 conferences, and 130,000 standalone books. All sources in SCOPUS go through a rigorous selection process. I will talk about that. And this is done by an independent board, which we call the Content Selection and Advisory Board. Just adding a reminder that SCOPUS does not ask authors a fee to be indexed. For a journal to be indexed in SCOPUS, the publisher must proactively suggest a title for indexing. And the journal title is then evaluated by this content selection board as to whether or not it will be suitable to be included in Scopus. So I missed some animation there, so that is the complete picture of the content that is covered in Scopus. So the selection criteria is the first line of defense then that we have against being infiltrated by the predatory journals. So we look at the quality of the sites, the publishing format, for example, and also the ethical statement. So quality is a big consideration. Diversity is also a big consideration. So looking at the international diversity and whether it is in line, whether the journal is in line with the aims and the scope that they articulate themselves. Relevancy is the next criteria. So looking at the content type and whether the subject is relevant for the international user base. So looking at quality, diversity, and relevancy. In more detail, the selection criteria consists of two levels. Firstly, there's a level of minimum criteria. So all journals indexed in Scopus should at least be peer-reviewed. It must have English abstracts, Roman script references, it must be published regularly, and it must have a published ethical statement. Then moving on from that, the second look, when it passes that stage of the criteria, a second level is looked at. So we look at the journal policy. What is the editorial policy? What type of peer review is used? What is the geographic diversity of the authors and of the editors? Then look at the quality of the content, the actual contribution to science. What is the clarity of the abstract? How readable are the articles? Also looking at the journal standing. So that is the citedness of the journal. We track that, how is it already cited, are articles cited of those journals, and looking at the editor's standing, and that is not the prestige of the editor, but how active and how engaged is the editor in that journal. Then regularity, are there any delays in publication? And then the online, more technical things like the online availability, whether the content is online, whether it has a good website. So, but despite all of these criteria, we found that dubious journals still infiltrate. And also keeping in mind that since Scopus was launched in 2004, more than 56 million articles have been added to Scopus. So the content originally came from different sources. It came from Embase, Science Direct, Compendex, from Medline, and over the years the requirements of Scopus became more strict. So it became time that we do a thorough re-evaluation. So all of these factors also showed that some of the journals no longer met the Scopus criteria. So why this is important, why this is very important for us, is because Scopus is used, and this is why I'm using this slide, is because Scopus is used across the world for national research assessments. It's used for university rankings. It's used by numerous universities to incentivize research. So with this very high reliance on Scopus comes a very big responsibility. I was thinking when I thought of including this slide that my son was always watching Spider-Man, and I can always remember that phrase: with great power comes great responsibility. So this is very important for us to make sure that our database does not reflect those kinds of journals. Even more so in South Africa, where Scopus as a DHET accredited source represents 92% of all the accredited journals. So this effectively makes Scopus the most prominent measure for incentivizing publication in South Africa today. So as I said, this responsibility is not taken lightly. So the process that we devised looks like this. It is aimed to flag predatory and underperforming journals in a structural way, and it was implemented in 2014. The title reevaluation process consists of 3 approaches. So it's based on direct feedback from users on dubious practices. Then also identifying poor performance using metrics and benchmarks, which I'll discuss in more detail. And then the implementation of an algorithm which we call radar to predict journals with outlying performance. If a journal is then earmarked for reevaluation, is it measured against 6 criteria, which I'll explain. And if they don't, and it's flagged and the journal flag remains, the journal will be reviewed by the independent SCOPUS Content and Selection Board with the possible consequences of the journal then being discontinued. So we contact the publishers, we ask them to correct their behavior, and if that doesn't happen within a 2-year period, then it is discontinued. So this is just the rest of the animation. So if it's not corrected within 2 years, then the journal is re-evaluated. Okay, so the specific 6 benchmarks that we look at to compare journal performance with peer journals in their field, so using metrics for this. The journal self-citation rate, if the journal self-citation rate exceeds peer journals by more than 200%, so double that. So looking at the self-citation rate then. If the journal citation rate is 50% less than peer journals, that also flags the journal. And the journal's IPP, simplified as the average citations per article, if that is also less than 50%, that of peer journals. The number of full text clicks on the journal, so this is more underperforming journals, the number of full text clicks and the abstract use, if that is also below 50% of that of peer journals. These journals are flagged. So the first reevaluation that we did, the results in 2016, and if you break them down, sorry, let me just go back. In 2016, the results were that 303 journals were flagged for reevaluation. 5 titles were excluded because they altogether no longer met the minimum criteria. Then based on metrics, 108 titles were identified, of which 42 of them were discontinued. And then based on publication concerns, 190 were flagged, and of those 24% were then discontinued. So in summary, the first round of results showed that 22,000 journals were evaluated, 300 of them underperformed for 2 consecutive years, and 100% of them were re-evaluated, 60% of them were discontinued. So keep in mind that the discontinuation may result from different types of transgressions. It may be due to predatory publications, which refers to the specific phenomenon coined by Jeffrey Beal, as being when a publisher publishes articles with little or no peer review, but still charge APC for them. So there's a very specific financial gain as the objective. But discontinuation can also result from unethical publication. So here, looking at excessive publication by an editorial board in its own journal, high article intensity by same author in the same issue, high volumes of repeated co-authorship. It can also result from underperformance. So these measures are not only for predatory journals, although it is aimed also at the predatory journals, but it looks at a wide variety of transgressions and underperformance. So an example of outlying behavior and changes in trends shown here. So let me just click through and have it all on the screen, and you'll see, sorry, I had a bit of a throat infection. So firstly, you can see on the slide, in terms of the number of articles. So there's a rapid, one of the flags would be a rapid output search. And in this example, you see articles increasing from 61 articles in a journal in 2011 to 991 articles in 2014. Secondly, the country affiliation shows a dramatic change in pattern from being predominantly Indian to being predominantly Chinese. So here you can see the country affiliation showing Indian affiliation, and then just a little time later, it's completely dominated by Chinese. And the same then in terms of the affiliation of the authors. Showing here predominantly Chinese authors published in Indian journals. So these are the kinds of identifiers which will trigger flags within our radar system. The SCOPUS is transparent about the reevaluation initiatives and about which titles are discontinued in the product. And this is to help national research assessments and also university rankings to be aware as coverage changes and alter their output, and authors also to take note not to publish in these underperforming journals. Just note that there are some discontinued sources that are not included in this specific list. If you go to the website, which is included here, you'll find that the discontinued list, which is a result of this reevaluation process, listed separately, because in fact you also get discontinued journals that are really discontinued, and they are not included in this, this specific list. Right. So as a summary, I want to quote the role of the rule of three, in saying that predatory publishing is on the rise around the globe and it holds a real threat for the integrity of science. So continuous reevaluation has become crucial. The radar system helps us to minimize the impact of these journals and has a key role to play. So for us as a major science publisher and as an indexing service, we have a great interest to the science community against this phenomenon. And although not all predatory journals can be detected immediately, we are making progress. Thank you.
Are there any questions or comments to any of our presenters?
Thank you very much. My concern is, I think, this whole issue of predatory publishers. Jeffrey Beall himself is anti-open access, but he does publish on open access. The fact that Elsevier does have such a stringent process, how does a journal become predatory? Is it because it is coming from the developing world? I know Monica Berger once did a presentation, and in her presentation she visualized the data. And on that presentation, everything that was deemed predatory was in red, and it was only in the developing countries. And that's my concern. What benchmarks are we using? Is it just the whim of one individual?
Thanks, Reggie. Very good question, and I don't have an answer for that. It's definitely the way that we look at predatory journals is also grouped with just unethical publication and underperforming journals, and it's definitely not based on Jeffrey Beall's list, although we do acknowledge his role in showing those out. But I certainly don't have a specific answer for you.
Is not, as you've indicated, is not what you said, underperforming. That doesn't necessarily make it predatory, and that's my concern.
Yes, can I just respond to that? Yeah, that's why I specifically showed out that We are talking about predatory journals, but we are also looking at just those that are underperforming and those that are also unethical.
I would agree with Reggie about the problem with underperforming journals. I just wondered, in your public benefit work, whether you worked on this with your the people you're working with in developing countries. Because it's very easy for, as you know, for a new journal in a developing country to underperform. And I know you do a lot of work. Is this on your radar?
The evaluation of the journals actually started in 2014. So this is quite a new process that we felt that we had to introduce at this stage. What work is being done in terms of in the underdeveloped, I'm not sure exactly whether that is incorporated
Just to be
already
interesting
yet.
because you do a lot of stuff. It'd be quite nice to know what you do.
What we do
and what
have
works.
is that we do have a lot of requests from all across Africa, all the countries that we have relations with, to educate them in terms of, because they are interested to hear how we look at the quality and to share that with them. So increasingly we're doing workshops, editorial workshops, and just workshops about the SCOPUS criteria, because that already, already gives them some idea of the kinds of things to look out for.